Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to this session of our Great Books program for the month of February. Each year, I basically start the year with a book that I have been contemplating and I consider great. And the Tibetan Mysticism is the Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism by Anarika Govinda. Lama Anarika Govinda is one of those great books. Along with The Secret of the Golden Flower, it's a book that I have read and reread multiple times over my life because I have found it as an inexhaustible well of wisdom and empowerment as I've sought through my meditative practice to discern the deeper layers of the Eastern mystical tradition, which, as I articulated in the lecture last month, I consider to be fundamentally superior to the Western metaphysical and spiritual tradition. I know that's a radical thing to say in a world not only of postmodernity where we don't believe anything is actually true except relative to something else somebody else is saying, and more fundamentally in the face of deep ecumenism, which teaches that all the religions in the end are saying the same thing. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that truth is not available to the human mind. I don't believe that all religious traditions are saying the same thing. I believe that there are very important distinctions that in our generation, as we teeter on the brink of self-destruction, we need to ponder because all roads do not lead to Rome. And I want to begin today by just recalling what I said last month because it's very important existentially to human survival. The Eastern metaphysical tradition is not only corroborated by the latest researches of quantum physics and cosmology, it's derived from the most ancient understandings of humanity itself that were never broken. The lineage from deep antiquity has never been broken in East Asia, in South Asia, even I would say in Africa. An understanding that the universe is a singularity and that the one and the many are all of the same consciousness, a unity that cannot be broken asunder. And while we observe that there are polarities in our world, in nature, day and night, the sun and the moon, male and female, in the Eastern metaphysical tradition, they're always held within the Tao. The yin and the yang are always held within the Tao. Oneness. When Judeo-Christianity emerged 2,000, 2,500 years ago, it broke that consensus and put forward a metaphysic of dualism that the creator and the created were completely distinct. that the earth, as a created thing by the Creator, had no sacredness to it. Because there was only one source of the sacred, and that was God. And God had chosen a certain people that were special, and everybody else was a Gentile. Christianity took this over, as did Islam. A basic metaphysic of dualism that separates that which is essentially united. And in ripping asunder that which is essentially united, the Abrahamic religions spawned traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, that were fundamentally religions about power and the exercise of power. Because if I'm different from you, if I'm the elect and you're the damned, I'm the chosen one and you are not. The only relationship between the two of us is who's going to dominate and who's going to be subordinated. And from the first moment when Israel left Egypt, their first act was to commit genocide on the indigenous peoples of Canaan, something that they're doing again today on the Palestinians. And they are doing it as God's will, as divine providence. Just like the Christians in the age of discovery, following the doctrine of dominion, the doctrine of discovery articulated by the popes in 1493 and 1494, giving the Christian Europeans carte blanche, divine blessing for the savaging of the Western Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, as ordained by God. It is that metaphysic that is in the process of destroying our world. And we in the West in particular need to own this reality and stop deluding ourselves that it's all one and it's just, isn't it wonderful? It is not, because we're the inheritors of a tradition that split the world asunder and created traditions, in fact, civilizations, based on power and the acquisition of power. And as I pointed out last month, it was Arnold Toynbee, the great British historian, known for his masterwork, A Study of History, that when he was asked, what's the greatest event of the 20th century? He said, the arrival of Buddhism to the West. It was Albert Einstein who, when asked what religion would survive into the future, he said, Buddhism. It's an extraordinary synchronicity of archetypal interactive formation that right at the moment when the West, motivated by dualism and power and conquest and exploitation, believing that other people don't have any value and the earth is not sacred, right at the moment where we've brought the entire process to the brink of extinction. What begins to flow into the West? But the metaphysic of unity, the metaphysic of the Tao, of harmony, of the sacredness of all things, the high and the low. One of the first Westerners to understand this was a young Ernst Hoffmann, born in 1898 in Germany, who at the age of 16 got very ill, went to the beautiful Mediterranean island of Capri, and in his explorations there discovered Buddhism and immediately and totally felt belonging. And soon thereafter, he went to Sri Lanka. He traveled in India. He set up the World Union of Buddhists. He traveled in Tibet. He traveled in Kashmir and Sikkim. He spent the rest of his life delving into the vastness of Buddhism, and in particular, Tibetan Buddhism. Hence his name, Lama Anarika Govinda. That was the name that was given to him by his Tibetan Buddhist guru. He died in 1985 in Mill Valley, California, not far from where I'm speaking to you today. And it is said by those who were there that he died with fits of laughter. He wrote a number of books, The Way of the White Cloud, and really in some ways his master work, The Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism, although he himself considered that his masterwork was a commentary that he wrote on the I Ching. And I may choose that as one of the great books for next year because the I Ching has been my constant companion for a very, very, very long time. And to apply one's intellect and heart to Anarika Govinda's treatment of the I Ching will be a pleasure indeed. I want to today, as concisely as I can, explicate through various passages in the text what Anarika Govinda's understanding was of the foundations of Tibetan mysticism. And in his way of understanding these things, he said that everything one needs to know about Tibetan Buddhism is contained in the great mantra, OM MANI PADME HUM. That's the Sanskrit way of saying it. In Tibet, they say it OM MANI PADME HUM. So the Padme becomes Pemi. And that's important to note because when we think of mantras, we often think that we have to have an exactitude of pronunciation for it to be activated, but that's actually not the case. And I want to start with this point on the meaning of mantra. Mantra comes from the Greek mene and the word tra, mantra. Man means to think. Tra means a tool. So when you think of mantras, one has to think, says Govinda, of a tool for thinking. a tool for understanding. And it is of important note that mantras are sounds, because sound is the basic characteristic of consciousness and the manifest world. Everything that is both invisible and visible, both audible and inaudible, is a frequency. And all frequencies have sounds. And the sound of Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the way I learned it, Padme Hum, is the sound for the Tibetan Buddhists that characterizes Avalokiteshvara, the god of compassion, Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion, the female manifestation of Avalokiteshvara. And of course, as we all know, this mantra is the great mantra of the Dalai Lama. So what I would like to do first is just to comment on some of the things that Anarika Govinda says about mantras, because this is what we're dealing with today, is a mantra, a tool for thinking, a tool for understanding through a certain pronunciation of sound. And the point that he makes is that, and I'll read here, the power and effect of a mantra depends on the spiritual attitude, the knowledge and the responsiveness of the individual. The sound of the mantra is not a physical sound. It cannot be heard by the ears, but only by the heart. And it cannot be uttered by the mouth, even though the mouth pronounces the words, but only by the mind. A mantra gives power only to those who are conscious of its inner meaning. And then he cautions, mantras are not spells. Mantras do not act on account of their own magic, own nature, but only through the mind and heart that experiences them. Mantras do not possess any power of their own. They are only the means of concentrating already existing experiences of the spiritual seeker. So let's just take that in for a moment. We speak Om Mani Padme Hum, but that's not the mantra. The mantra is the resonance in the mind, in the heart of the seeker as he or she presences themselves in the mantric reality that they're seeking to call forth. And that means that mantras are indeed a tool. They're the journey, they're not the destination. And what determines the efficacy of the tool is not the tool, but the intention of that one who holds and wields the tool. Om is considered throughout the Eastern metaphysical tradition as the great sound of the universe. It is the universal sound. It is the sound that the entire universe makes as it continues to unfold with trillions and trillions of galaxies. As Pythagoras, the Greek philosopher, said when he coined the term cosmos to describe the universe, it was because Pythagoras could hear the sound of the universe. He could hear the sound of Mars and Jupiter and Venus. And so he says, this isn't just universe, this is cosmos. And cosmos is a beautiful ornament because he said, if you listen to the sound of the universe, and the reason why it is cosmos, it is one great song. And the song is Om. Om opens every solemn utterance, every formula of worship, every meditation. As Rabindranath Tagore so beautifully said, Om is the symbolic word for the infinite, the perfect, the eternal. The sound as such is already perfect and represents the wholeness of things. All our religious contemplations begin with Om and end with Om. It is meant to fill the mind with the presentation, the presentiment of eternal perfection, and to free it from the narrow world of selfishness and Maya. Because it's the word, the sound of the infinite, it is also the sound and the word for the urge for liberation, because every finite being yearns for the infinite. That's the origin, that's the catalytic aspect of what generates our spirituality, is that we're caught in finiteness and we urgently yearn for the infinite. So when we utter the sound Om, we not only are describing the infinite, we're activating that urge within us for our liberation. Isn't that exquisite? That Om is both everything and that urge within us who are not everything to become everything. That's Om. Om, therefore, is not the ultimate end and highest mantric system as Buddhism. It is the beginning of religious contemplation, but it is not the end. That's the hum, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But I wanted to just bring this one aspect of Om to our collective reflection today as both the totality and that which catalyzes in us the urge for that totality. And that's why, says Govinda, its sound opens the innermost being of a person to the vibrations of a higher reality, not a reality outside themselves, but one which is forever present within ourselves and around ourselves, from which we are excluded by the limitations of our mind and the limitations of our karma, but that which we now journey toward. It is the transcendental sound of the inborn law of all things, the eternal rhythm of all that moves, a rhyme in which law becomes the expression of perfect freedom. Law, finiteness, under the guidance of Om, is transformed into perfect freedom. Extraordinary. The sound Om is like the opening of the arms to embrace all that lives. It is not an expression of self-expansion, but rather of universal acceptance, devotion, and receptivity. Thus, Om became the symbol of the universal attitude of Buddhism, particularly in its Mahayana form, which knows no difference of sex, just as the Bodhisattva who resolves to save all beings without distinction and who at the same time helps everyone according to his own needs, his own nature, his own way. Now, this is important because this is the reason why the Om becomes the Mani. Om Mani Padme Hum. So now we're going to transition to the Mani. Because the Om catalyzes the urge for liberation within an understanding that the finite is one with the infinite, that foundational truth that the Western religious traditions negated to the cost of the entire world, but which is fundamental in understanding not only the Eastern metaphysical tradition, but Tibetan Buddhism in particular. This is the Mani. This is the philosopher's stone. This is the diamond's scepter. This is the lightning bolt. This is the purba. Mani is that aspect that works in an alchemical way to catalyze a sense of the infinite in that which is finite. It's an extraordinary. And so if you think about Mani, Manas, says Govinda, it's that aspect inside all of us, because we're finite, but we're also infinite simultaneously. We're the one and we're the many simultaneously. And so the Mani, the diamond's scepter, the philosopher's stone, the alchemical process that leads this urge to liberation activated by the Om, is the mediating intelligence between the universal and the individual intellectual consciousness, which takes part in both sides. The Mani represents the stabilizing element of the mind, the central point of balance between that which is finite, me talking to you right now, and that which is infinite, the totality of the entire cosmos, of which I am completely one, and so are you. And all is one song together. It's the Mani that is the mediating point, that little center point between the two circles. It's the intuitive mind is one with the universal mind by reason of its participation in transcendental intelligence, and one with the empirical mind, little old me, by reason of its finiteness. That's the whole secret and key of alchemy. Everything is connected with everything else. So the questions that the alchemists and philosophers, East and West, for time, since time immemorial, have pondered, well, if everything is connected with everything else, everything's changing all the time, how do we turn lead into gold? How do we turn one substance into another substance, knowing that that's perfectly possible? Jesus turned water into wine. So how do we transmute the baseness of our finiteness in a process that leads us to the infinite? That's what Mani is all about. It's an extraordinary element of our consciousness, says Govinda, which holds the balance between the empirical individual qualities on the one side and the universal spiritual qualities on the other side. It is that which either binds us to the world of the senses or liberates us from the world of the senses. It is the base metal of the alchemist, which through magical power, meaning meditation, pranayam, all the things that we do to transmute, that's all the practice, spiritual practices are about in the end, is the transmutation of our base illusions into enlightenment. That's Mani. Om activates the Mani. And the one point that I want to make about this process, which I find exquisite, the reason why I love Tibetan Buddhism so much, is so let's ponder this for a moment. The one and the many, the finite and the infinite. So, what happens when the drop of finiteness aligns with the infinite? Does the drop become the infinite, or does the infinite become the drop? And this is where it's really, really good. And this is a big point for Anarika Govinda. The Buddhist does not endeavor to dissolve his being in the infinite, to fuse his finite consciousness with the consciousness of the all, or to unite his soul with the all soul. His aim is to become conscious of his ever existing indivisible and undivided completeness. The perfectly enlightened ones are those who have been awakened to the perfect consciousness of completeness. Therefore, Mani has been interpreted poetically as the dewdrop in the lotus. But it is important, he says, to understand that it is not the dewdrop in the lotus that slips into the sea, but in the Tibetan Buddhist way of understanding it, it is the sea that slips into the dewdrop. The universe becomes conscious in the individual, but not vice versa. It's a very interesting point to make. That as Mani, this alchemical process begins to unfold, we think we're becoming enlightened, but really we're allowing the universe, the infinite, to become conscious within us. The ocean condenses into the drop of the sea. The universe becomes conscious in the individual, and it is in this process that completeness is achieved, in regards to which we neither can speak any more of individual nor of the universe, which means, says Govinda, selfhood and universe are only the inside and outside of the same illusion. The realization of completeness, however, has all the characteristics of universality without presuming an external cosmos, and has likewise all the characteristics of individual experience without presuming ego identity. The idea of the realization of completeness escapes the dualistic concepts of unity and plurality, of I and not I, or whatever we may call the pairs of opposites, as long as we move on the plane of our empirical consciousness. And what he's saying here is that we don't disappear, we actually become more real. And that's one reason why the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and the Buddhist tradition generally over the Hindu tradition and certainly the Western traditions don't have as a negation of the body. Because if the ocean is dissolving into the drop, every part of who we are becomes sacred, something to be honored. But honored not from the point of view of the finite, but from the point of view of the infinite now, becoming conscious of itself in the finite. That, in essence, is how Anarika Govinda understands Tibetan Buddhism. So I want to then move to Padma, because I know we have limited amounts of time. I want to get to discussion. But Padma, the best way to understand Padma, if Om activates the urge to liberation, Mani is the philosopher's stone that catalyzes this through this mediation between finite and infinite, in which the infinite, as enlightenment happens, doesn't absorb us, but becomes conscious through us. The best way to understand Padma is the lotus blossom. It starts in the mud at the bottom of the pool and comes up through the murky water. And then the lotus blossom the leaves are right on top of the water, and the blossom faces the sky. That's the alchemical process. That's Padma. That journey of the soul that with the catalytic energy of Mani, which transforms our finiteness into receptacles of infinite consciousness. Our spiritual journey resembles the growth of the lotus flower out of the muck, the mud, the darkness at the bottom of the pond, through the water to the sky. That's Padme. It's really extraordinary. And so much more I could say about this, but I want to tease out one aspect of the distinctions between the Hindu way of understanding this and the Tibetan Buddhist way of understanding this, because it's the Padma, it's the growth of the lotus blossom, that's the chakra system. These are the nadis in the body, the male principle on the left, the female principle on the right, the energy centers of our body. Because as the lotus blossom is coming up from the root chakra through the Hara chakra to the solar plexus, through the heart, through the throat, through the third eye, through the crown, and beyond, the energies of the body are being informed and transmuted by spiritual energies. And that's the essence of the Tibetan understanding of the chakras. It's the confluence of physical, remember, finite, and spiritual, infinite. Our chakras are those vortices of energy located strategically, shall we say, in our bodies, through which our finiteness and the infiniteness of the cosmos intertwine. And the clearer we become through meditative practice, doing our pranayama, our breathing practice, and our yoga and our meditation and all the things that we do, we're really just purifying our capacity for our chakras to transmute into our physical domain the consciousness of the entire universe. That's why it's really important to take care of yourself. And why I so love Tibetan Buddhism, because it embraces the body. All this body denying spirituality that is infused Christianity probably more dramatically than maybe any other tradition in the world, is a negation of that which we most essentially are. You have no soul without the body. Your soul may leave the body after the body's gone, but while you're here, your body is your temple. Embodied spirituality is basically all we've got, folks, for the duration of our lifetime. So we need to honor our temple and understand, as the Tibetans do, that the body is critical for spiritual development and well-being. And that, of course, leads to Tantra, which I won't get into at this moment, although I'm happy to answer some questions about it. But I wanted to just tease out some of the distinctions between the Hindu understanding of Tantra and the Tibetan Buddhist understanding of Tantra. The main difference is that in Buddhist Tantrism, it is not Sakti, divine power, that is important. It's the female aspect of God, prajna, which is the most important. So while in the Hindu tantras, the concept of power forms the focus of interest, the central idea of tantric Buddhism is vajra, knowledge, wisdom. To the Buddhists, power is maya, the very power that creates illusion, from which only prajna, wisdom, can liberate us. It is therefore not the aim of the Buddhists to acquire power or to join themselves to the powers of the universe, either to become their instrument or to become their master. But on the contrary, they try to free themselves from those powers, which since eons have kept us prisoner of samsara. And I wanted to raise this in relationship to the distinction that I was making at the beginning of my remarks today about the deficiencies of the Western religious civilizational tradition. We are about power and the exercise of power over the other. That is the sum total of it all. And you may have some teachings about love your neighbor and so forth and so on with some of the great masters. But those were the ones who were crucified by a tradition that basically doesn't accept that. Genocide in Gaza is more consistent with Judeo-Christianity than the Sermon on the Mount. So the Tibetan Buddhists, rightly, in my view, understood that the deepest spirituality is not the acquisition of power, but the acquisition of the wisdom. It's not a masculine impulse. It's ultimately a feminine impulse. And again, much more can be said about this. I just wanted in these lectures, I can only touch on various things because I want to provoke thought. This is being given in the spirit of truth pursued, not truth possessed. But it's a very um, uh, profound distinction that Anarika Govinda is making between power and wisdom. Because if you work out the implications of this, you get the distinction between Western civilization and Eastern civilization. Which brings me to hum. And hum is the completion. You have om, as Govinda says, in the experience of om, we open ourselves, we go beyond ourselves, we liberate ourselves by breaking through the narrow confines of egohood or self-imposed limitation. And thus we become one with the all, with the infinite. But if we would stay in this state, if the drop just wants to be in the ocean, there would be an end of existence as an individual, as a living, thinking, experiencing being. And the one would not have the many into which to incarnate the joy of being. So however much we value those properties of the home, of the Om, these alone are not sufficient to describe the nature of a Buddha. What raises him to the status of an enlightened one is the radiance and universality of his being, his power to reach the heart of every living being with the rays of his boundless compassion, his infinite capacity to participate in the joys and sufferings of others without being torn or swayed by them, without losing or limiting his universality. So it is the very human element of the character of the Buddha that is essential for any understanding of his enlightenment. This is so important, guys, in a Western tradition that's been built on the negation of the body, that it is the human element in the character of the Buddha, which is the essential aspect in understanding his enlightenment. That is like a very profound thought. And that's the hum. That is the great return of everything that we've done, knowing that we are one with it all. And with the Om, activating our urge for the liberation toward the one. But it is a liberation catalyzed by Mani that does not dissolve the one into the infinite, but makes the infinite conscious in who we are. Little old Jim. Little old Georgie. That's the process. And that realization is what creates the blossoming of the lotus. Alchemizing, transmuting. And when we burst out, where do we end up? Right where we started. So the Om is the ascent toward universality. Hum is the descent of the state of universality into the depths of the human heart. Hum cannot be without Om, but Hum is more than Om. It is the middle way which neither gets lost in the finite nor gets lost in the infinite, which is neither attached to one or attached to the other. Therefore it is said, in darkness are they who worship only the world, but in greater darkness are they who worship the infinite alone. Let me read that again. Therefore it is said, in darkness are they who worship only the world, but in greater darkness are they who worship the infinite alone. We therefore must have passed through the experience of Om in order to reach and understand the still deeper experience of Hum. This is why Om stands at the beginning and Hum at the end of the mantra. In the Om, we open ourselves, in the Hum, we give ourselves. Om is the door of knowledge. Hum is the door of the realization of this knowledge in our lives. Hum is thus a sacrificial sound. This is just genius, guys. Hum is thus a sacrificial sound. Our liberation is our sacrifice. The Sanskrit syllable hu means to sacrifice, to perform a sacrificial act or rite. The sole sacrifice, however, that the Buddha recognizes is the sacrifice of one's own self. And the great iconic representation of this that all of us have seen was when, at the end of his 40 days, underneath the bo tree, Buddha, having attained enlightenment, went through all the temptations of the evil spirits. And what did he do to cast them away? He simply reached down with his right hand and touched the ground. That is Hum. The end of all our exploration shall arrive at where we started and know the place for the first time. Om Mani Padme Hum. Well, thank you, everyone. Boy, that felt good. There's so much that I love about Tibetan mysticism, and I love talking about it. And so thank you for bearing witness with me, everyone, as I've expressed a few random thoughts about something that I hold very, very dearly in my life, and which is at the heart. It's at the cornerstone. It's the foundation of all my spiritual practice, Tibetan Buddhism, and the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Georgie, and then everyone, I want all you students to raise your hands and let's have a discussion.
That's an order.
Hope you're standing at attention.
Jim, dear, thank you so much for this absolutely wonderful, rich expose on this outstanding book of Govinda. I love that book. And how difficult it is to put in words Tibetan mysticism. Because at the end of the day, it is a feeling, right? It is, as you said, it is a resonance. And the two quick things I'd like to offer as almost as a footnote to your wonderful presentation on Om and on Om Mani Padme Hum. For many years, throughout my practice at the Buddhist community I'm part of, we start often our meditation only sounding the Om, only the Om. And it's so interesting because what the feeling it creates within me, I feel that how tense I am at the beginning, and after a few resounding of the Om, I'm becoming calmer and more peaceful. And it is, of course, about that knowing that Om is the resonance of the universe. I know that the little Georgie Porgy is getting connected to the cosmos, and all my cells start to resonate coherently. And once that is done, when I feel that we feel that our breathing is so much calmer, then we go into getting our mala and starting 108 times the Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, because that's a different feeling. And I just wanted to bring this up, this word feeling, because it is universal and at the same time very subjective too. And also referring to what you said about the one and the many, that there is the special Jim Garrison resonance that is part of the whole, and there is the special Georgie resonance that is part of the whole. We comprise the whole. Yes, we are individual expression of the universal consciousness. So I'd like to quiz you on this feeling. And Govinda put all these feelings in a beautiful, exquisite, and eloquent way in this book, and so succinctly, so clearly that it is. But at the end of the day, it is feeling. What do you feel about this feeling?
Well, he talks a lot toward the end of the book. I thank you for bringing that up, that enlightenment is a holistic process uh, between the mind and emotions and our bodies. And that's the importance of the Buddhist understanding of the chakras, that in the Hindu tradition, the chakras are generally considered, according to Govinda, more static. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they're more fluid and inexact, because what's important to the Tibetan Buddhists is the energy that flows from one chakra to the other between our bodies and our emotions and our minds. So think of heart-brain coherence with the gut. So gut, heart, brain coherence. That's what the Tibetan Buddhists, long before the modern era, understood, that each one of the chakras were different configurations of our physical relationship with the infinite. And so the brain is more around the intellect, the heart is more around the emotions and compassion and so forth and so on. And the gut, hara, would be more around the generative impulse of life itself. And so the how we feel is equally important to what we think, because it's the orientation of our thought and our emotions that in the Tibetan Buddhist view creates the ideal channeling for the generativity that's coming up from our root and sexual chakras, for example. So the feeling tone of the heart is really the crucible where the mind and the body meet, I would say, if I understand Govinda correctly.
Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to share with you and with all these all practices that how we start with the Om and then how we transition into the Om Mani Padme Hum, because definitely is a different feeling. It's almost as Govinda said as well, that Om is the entrance, is the starting point that aligns you with the greater field or the plenum. And then when you go into the deeper meaning of the four words, and then how it doesn't end, because we know there is no such thing as an end. It is just some other, maybe, I don't know, cognitive understanding of a very, very special meaning of four words, and how the whole cosmos and the universe is comprised and we are part of. So they're so powerful. They absolutely powerful. So
Mm.
yeah, I just wanted to share that the two feelings we all experience with this. So I think with this, thank you so much, Jim. Wonderful, amazing. And let's hear from others how they felt.
Okay, everyone, I want to see some hands go up. And while they're doing that, I thought you might be, just given what Georgie said I could recite, uh, uh, narrate how I met my mantra. I was a little boy. My parents were missionaries in Taiwan, and I was probably 8 years old, and I went to a boarding school, and there was a teacher there, one of the missionaries with whom my parents had actually gone to West China in the late 1940s, where I was actually born in 1951. And then we went back to the States, and then in 1953 went to Taiwan, and I went to a missionary school, and he was one of the missionaries that was there. And one day a small group of us were invited to his house, and he was going to tell us stories of China. And I was very eager to hear everything he had to say. And at one point we were sitting in a little bit of a circle. And at one point I was opposite him, as it turned out, just circumstantially. And he was saying, one thing I couldn't ever understand about these Tibetans is they were always mumbling. They're always mumbling. And I raised my hand. I said, "So what were they mumbling?" And he says, "Oh, they called it a mantra or something. They just kept saying, 'Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum.'" And as soon as he said the mantra, I had this extraordinary sensation I've never had again in my life. I could see his words coming out of his mouth, almost in corporeal form across the room, and they hit me right in the third eye and went right into my brain. Om Mani Padme Hum. And I've been reciting Om Mani Padme Hum ever since. I had no idea what it meant until much, much, much later. But all of a sudden, I just realized that this was something that I needed to take very seriously, even though the missionary was deriding it as superstition and devil worship and everything else like that. I understood intuitively as a little boy, this is pretty serious stuff. I need to pay attention. And it gave me such solace over the years until much later, when I was a teenager in my 20s, I began to read, you know, books that explain what a mantra was. But I was practicing one long, long, long before I ever knew what it even was. And I consider that one of the richest blessings of my life, that incidental experience. Okay, everybody. Who are the, I can't recognize which one of you are the PhD students. Georgie, can you tell? I'm going to call on some people. I want to hear what people think. Georgie, who are
Well, we
the,
have poor Mitchell there.
okay, Paul Mitchell. I'm going to allow Paul to talk. There we go.
Hi, team. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so much for my consciousness. A couple of things. I was born Jewish, raised as Christian, but became very interested in Buddhism, so much so that I actually went and got blessed by the Dalai Lama himself. Which is my blessing. And but one of the things that I've got from this, apart from all my wonderful consciousness and Om Mani Padme Hum, is that I'm overweight. And I think that if I want to raise my consciousness, what I got from the reading was I need to take more attention to my physicality, and that is a form of enlightenment. And it might sound a funny thing to get from such a deep philosophical book, but that's where I landed at the end. The second thing I'd say is, my God, I struggled. I think I talked about this. I struggled going through and trying to get the elements and and I thought, oh God, am I smart enough to do a PhD? I mean, really, am I getting this? And so I thanked that part, and I moved on to the other part that has a universal knowing. I don't know whether any of that's making sense to him.
Totally, totally. Well, whatever speaks to you, if out of this experience, you pay more attention to your body as the temple of the Holy Ghost, as St. Paul put it, then
Mm.
good on you. Because as Georgie was indicating with her question, it is the alignment ultimately between our mind and our heart and our body that is required for the enlightenment process. And once that's achieved, then all things are possible.
Yeah.
And if that is not achieved, then very little is possible,
Mm.
and I'd also like to comment, Paul, on the fact that you wonder if you're smart enough. I have that experience every time I read the book.
It's good to know.
I think, what? All the intricacies of the colors
Yeah.
and the shapes and the
Yeah.
sounds and all these Tibetan terms that you don't have even how to pronounce them, let alone really what they mean. So, you read it over and over as I have over the years, and different things come to you with each reading. And so I've learned to read the book lightly
Right. Okay. That's a nice.
because I'm rather thick-headed, as Georgie will
Mm.
testify. So
Mm.
sometimes it takes a while for me to get it. But Georgie is patient with me, I must say, as she'll be patient with you on your dissertation. The
Thanks,
other thing I
Steve.
want to I want to just comment on is your journey. You're at what they call a Jubu. If you read that book, Jewish people and
Mm.
Judeo-Christian people, I was one of them too, that somehow intuitively went to the East.
Mm.
The Beatles went to the East. Anarika Govinda, German, went to the East.
Yeah.
Ram Dass went to the East. Just about anybody who was anybody in the 60s and 70s went East and imbibed of that spirituality and then brought back that unity consciousness into the dualism and the shattering power mongering of the West. And that basic dynamic is being played out. So I want to just commend you as being one of those sensitive souls in a tradition that has really done a lot of damage to the world, to go and get the blessing of the Dalai Lama, because I think that metaphysic is more important than ever in our world, in
Mm.
the face of what the West is doing to the world. And I'll be um, talking more about this in my lectures in May and June, because I'm going to do another book that goes into the historicity of collapse, civilizational collapse.
Yes.
And but thank you. And just in a word, just because I'm just so interested, because you're exemplifying the thesis that I've been articulating. What motivated you, to go from your arc as Jewish, Christian, Buddhist? What is briefly,
My
but what
my
led you on this journey?
my mother, in one word,
Oh,
my mother. My mother.
interesting.
What they call a Mischling, and a Mischling is it's unfortunately it was a word to an extent invented by the Nazis, which meant like a part Gentile, part Jewish. So
Oh,
although it goes down the mother's line, as you know, my grandfather was quite strict, but my grandmother wasn't. My grandmother tried to convert and didn't, um, and so was a mum was a living embodiment of that dualism between
mm,
and my grandfather to an extent got rejected by the Judaism because grandma didn't convert. There's a whole lot of story, but my mum felt there was an unfairness in that, and therefore we should seek out other things. So I know more about the baby Jesus than most people. Build on the rocks and not upon the sand. But but then I guess, yeah, so it was mainly my mother that looked at it. And then, quite frankly, it was commerciality. I was working with a business that actually sponsored a lot of people to come to Australia in a spiritual sense, one of which was the Dalai Lama. And because of that, we got invited to have a one-on-one a conversation with him. So there's two
Fantastic.
words, probably mother, and it was a commercial arrangement. And by the way, the Dalai Lama is very commercial, let me tell you. I've never met a better business person. It's quite interesting.
Oh, say more.
Well, he gets it. He just gets it. He gets it. Although he just sees money as an energy, and he feels that we need certain energy to change the world. So he has no problem being sponsored or getting it, as long as it comes from the right source. Um,
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I got you.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He
Well,
was
he's got
he
to
was
pay his
asked.
bills too.
There was a lot of attack on him. He was fantastic. There was a lot of these. I can remember one guy said, "Oh, that's all very well, but what if someone's got a gun at you? They've got a gun at you, and they're going to shoot you in the head. Do you just go, kindness, shoot me?" And he laughed. He went, he said, "Maybe I take the gun and I shoot him in the knee." That's what he said, and we couldn't believe it. But then he expanded it, so it's like this wonderful practicality with this beautiful humor. Anyway, I'm talking too much.
No, no, no. That's good. Well, listen. Well, thank you so
Mm.
much, Paul, for stepping up. So, well, I think we'll bring this session to a close, and thank you all.
Is there
And
anyone else? We've got another 15 minutes that wants to. I'd love to hear from the other students.
I don't see anyone. I think they're all struck dumb,
Okay.
um, which happens from time to time. That's all right. Um, good. It is what it is. I want to thank all of you for your attention over the last couple of months. We'll have a new book next month. Uh, Georgie, do you recall who's up for next month?
Yeah, it's me.
Oh, good. And what's your book?
It's the title of the book is The Door, and it's written by Magda Sabo. Unfortunately, we are not related. And it's going to be a very interesting presentation, the first. Well, hopefully, you will like it because it will be a hybrid presentation. I will introduce some parts of the film version was made, and it is the main protagonist is played by Helen Mirren. And it's a wonderful film. The book is absolutely outstanding. And it is about a very interesting relationship between two women. So I thought that I bring you a novel this time and not some philosophical self-help, very clever book, but let's talk about relationships.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
I love this book very much, and it's been really highly rated, won a few prizes, international prizes too, and the film version of it is outstanding. So that will be me. So the author is Magda Sabo. I'm going to well, you will have it on the website, Ada, but I will. The same surname as mine, but Sabo is a very common name in Hungary, just like Taylor. So, but
Mm.
so yeah, I look forward to seeing you all then.
Okay, everyone will reconvene same time, same station, the first Tuesday of every month with Dr. Zabo for March and April. Thanks, everybody. See you in a month. Bye.
Mm,
Thank you, Paul.